What's up, everybody? Welcome inside the MRN studios here at NASCAR Productions in Concord, North Carolina. It is another edition of NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by our friends at Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years, Whelen Engineering. My name is Chris Wilner, MRN Pit Reporter, and yes, it's not Kyle Rickey. We've got a special guest for us this week. Kyle is taking care of some business up at Stafford, but instead we've got the great Rob Blount from Flow Racing. Rob, welcome back. I know it's been a little bit since you've been on Coast to Coast, but you have been ultra busy at Flow Racing with all the NASCAR regional coverage that we can handle. You guys have been doing a great job, but how's your summer been? You getting tired yet with all that's going on?
Well, the summer's better now. It's the first time I think anyone's ever referred to me as the great Rob Blount, so thank you for that, Chris.
Just trying to pad the ego a little bit.
No, I appreciate it. Hopefully I can still fit my head through the door when I walk out of here. But no, the summer's been busy. It's been a lot of fun between Cars Tour coverage, NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour coverage, NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Series coverage. I mean, we've been pretty much wide open, myself and a few other people at Flow Racing, but it's been a lot of fun, and it's been really rewarding seeing a lot of the feedback that we've been getting, because this is year 3, really, of getting a lot of pavement racing on the Flow Racing platform. You've watched a lot of it. You grew up in the dirt world. Flow racing, usually a lot of dirt, but we're starting to really finally make our headway into the pavement world, and it's been a lot of fun to continue to grow that.
I know, and that is my number one source for all things NASCAR regional has been Flow Racing, so appreciate the hard work. Glad to have you on the show, too, as we kind of discuss the weekend that was and then the weekend that is going to be coming, because we've got some huge races, including the Hampton Heat coming up that I know you're going to be a part of, so we'll talk about that coming up in segment number 3. We've got Christian Rose going to join us on the show as well to talk a little bit of the ARCA Menard Series, heading down to IRP, my home track in Indianapolis. So we'll talk about that, plus much, much more. So let's start, Rob, with the weekend that was NASCAR Canada, which also is on the Flow Racing channel. That has been fun to watch, because for years, Kyle and I have been struggling to find the series. It's so exciting, but it's been hard for us stateside to watch it, but it's been a part of Flow Racing for a couple years. We got to watch Marc-Antoine Camirand get his second win of the season. How crucial has it been to have NASCAR Canada part of the Flow Racing family of series that they cover?
It's been really cool, and we've been trying to get people to understand stateside how good the racing is in the NASCAR Canada Series, formerly known as the NASCAR Pinty Series, of course. It's a very diverse series. Street courses, road courses. They were just on the dirt at Oshweekend, short tracks. They go everywhere. I think even an old runway they kind of race on, too, kind of like down in Florida. They're similar, but it is a lot of fun. The racing is pound for pound some of the best stocker racing you're going to see, and those guys are aggressive and they get after it. Ton of fun to watch. We've been trying to make sure that people know, listen, you want to watch some really good, really full-bodied, full-contact stock car racing, go watch the NASCAR Canada Series, because they don't let up.
100%, and they didn't either this past weekend at Oshweekend. You mentioned being on the dirt. That is so unique for that series, but it also brings out some stars stateside to come up. We saw Ken Schrader get behind the wheel. We saw Chase Briscoe, who actually won the pole for the NASCAR Canada race at Oshweekend. He ended up finishing 5th. Ken Schrader finished on the podium in 3rd, but Marc-Antoine Camirand, as we mentioned, held off Andrew Ranger, and of course that's going to be a championship that continues to tighten up over the course of the year. Just 1 point separates Camirand in the title chase on top of Andrew Ranger. Kevin Lacroix is only 9 points back as well. So really going to be interesting. They're kind of hitting their summer stretch here this year. So can't wait to find out what happens with NASCAR Canada as we move forward. Sutherland Automotive Speedway in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, that's a handful to say, is coming up this Saturday at 8:05 Eastern. Again, you can watch that all on Flow Racing, but congratulations to Marc-Antoine Camirand, win number 2 of the season. Back stateside in a little bit of super late model action, we saw Eric Jones go up to Jennerstown Speedway in the Motor Mountain Masters 150. First time he's ever been there, and he goes out and wins the race, but we know the talent Eric Jones has behind the wheel of a late model, but at the same time, how difficult is it to show up at a track you've never been to with a series that you've never really raced with and go out and win? Extremely difficult,
but I think you know it as well. You're with the Cup Series a lot. We sometimes forget how good the Cup drivers are, how good you have to be a regular in the Cup Series. And it just goes to show, you go into a series that you're not super familiar with. The only other times he's run with the UARA National Tour is at his home track of Berlin in Michigan. You go to a track that you're unfamiliar with, and immediately go out there and figure it out. But that's what they're expected to do. And especially the last few years of the Cup Series, with how diverse that schedule has been and all these new races that we've gone to, you've got to learn these races on the fly and these tracks on the fly. And Eric's figured that out and got himself a cool red jacket to go with it.
I know it's been a little bit difficult on the Cup side of things for Eric and Legacy Motor Club, of course, still transitioning to Toyota this year and some of the ups and downs of their season. But like he said, a win is a win, doesn't matter what he drives and what it is, but sometimes that can turn a driver's luck around. So we'll see if that translates into Brickyard Weekend as he picked up the red jacket at the Motor Mountain Masters 150. Jeremy Doss finished second, made the cross-country trip from like Northern California all the way to Jennerstown Speedway. Bubba Pollard, what more can you say about Bubba? Just racking up top fives, top three finishes. He finishes third, and that's his third straight podium for the UARA series so far this year. So really hot start to Bubba Pollard. But coming up, they've got more races the rest of the season. Evan Shocko, Johnny Soderberg part of the field as well. So really stout field up there at Jennerstown. And then we had the 45th annual or 45th running of the Vermont Governor's Cup at Thunder Road Speed Bowl. And this is a racetrack that has been on my bucket list. Of course, home of legendary Dave Moody for the Motor Racing Network. I know he was scheduled to be part of the original running before the rain hit. Cole Custer made the trip up there, but it is a special race, the Governor's Cup. And to make it more special, it was the final leg of the Ken Squire Triple Crown Cup that they added this year, honoring the legendary voice, former voice here at MRN. So what about that event makes it special? And obviously we saw the locals really take it to some of the national guys that showed up.
You just got to go, Chris. It's one of those events that when you get there and you get to experience that event at that track along with the Milk Bowl, which I've never been to, but I've heard is similar and is their biggest event, you just understand it. Those cars, the ACT store style late models at that racetrack, the setting up on the side of a mountain, it is fantastic. The food there is great. The people are great. The racing is great, even after they added the walls all the way around it. And it goes to show you, Cole Custer finished 13th in that. Defending Xfinity Series champion, it is hard for that is one track and one type of car that is hard for the Cup guys to get a handle of. You look at some of the other guys, Brad Keselowski, 18th in 2022, Ryan Preece finished 10th in 2021, Kyle Busch crashed running 6th in 2020. Unfortunately, Kyle Busch crash has been a theme that we've been hearing a lot this year.
Sadly, yes.
Tony Stewart, 16th in 2009, Clint Boyer, 14th in 2014. It is hard for the Cup guys to figure out those style of cars at that racetrack, and the locals just have a hold on it. And that's why Scott Dragon, 4th win in that one. It is a lot of fun at that racetrack. You've got to get to that event.
Yeah, 100%. And it is challenging for sure. Milton, Vermont, Scott Dragon, as you mentioned, got the win, his 4th Governor's Cup title picked up the inaugural Ken Squire Cup as well for the Triple Crown. He battled Jimmy Hebert for much of the race. Jimmy had to fall back, I think, to 4th at the end of that race. Nick Sweek, Jason Corliss were the top 3 finishers in that one. What is it about Thunder Road that makes it so challenging? Obviously, it's the style of racetrack, but I mean, is it just the tight corners? Is it the banking? Is it the design? I mean, what is it about Thunder Road?
It's a little bit of everything. It's the transitions into and out of the corners, it seems like, is very challenging, especially coming out of turn 4. The track really narrows up on you. And that used to be the only place where there was a wall, was on the front stretch. And you've probably heard the term before, if you're familiar with Northeast Racing, the Widowmaker. Yeah. That's the turn 4 wall. Dave Moody has probably talked that up a bunch. Now, again, the wall is everywhere, but it still reaches out and grabs you when you come out of turn 4. And also just the style of racing. It's very, you're used to seeing a lot of power behind late models because of the power to weight ratio, but those cars, very momentum based. And the way you roll the corner, you roll down, up, in the center and down again or up to the wall. It's very challenging racetrack. It seems to throw a lot of guys for a loop.
Certainly does. Can't wait to talk about Milk Bowl here later on in the season up at Thunder Road Speed Bowl. Meanwhile, some other winners over the weekend. Jason Jefferson, the Washington State racer, got the 33rd Montana 200 at Mission Valley Super Oval. That, again, is under the Northwest Super Late Model Series banner here new for this year. Casey Roderick, a driver you're familiar with as well on the ASA Southern Super Series, finally got a win. Well, everybody was wondering, is he going to win? I mean, he's been on the podium, he's leading the championship, and maybe thought he was going to go the whole season and win the championship without getting a win, but he gets it done up there at the North-South Super Late Model Challenge at Nashville Fairgrounds. I mean, we know the history of Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, and that's pretty awesome, but for Casey to finally get the monkey off his back, is this the snowball that happens to where maybe he rolls off 2 or 3 more here before the end of the year?
It's interesting you use the word snowball, because that is obviously the big race that he is chasing, and getting that monkey off your back in midsummer might set you up to get those last few wins and get that momentum going leading into the Snowball Derby in December, which we know all the super late model guys nationwide, that's the one that they've got their eyes on. But it has been weird. Casey Roderick, that Anthony Campy Racing team, super fast, super consistent, just hadn't been able to rattle off the win before this weekend. At least they finally got it done now.
I know they certainly did, and I know it's been a long time coming for that group as well. Of course, and the podium, again, for like the third straight race has been Casey, in some order, Casey Roderick, Bubba Pollard, and Steven Nasse. In some different order, it's been like that. Now, obviously, they're probably three of the best to ever do it in a super late model, but at the same time, I mean, that's pretty consistent, so the championship will still be pretty tight.
Hey, that's your big three in super late model racing, right? Remember we talked about the big three in the Cup Series a few years back? That's always your big three in super late model racing in some form or fashion. Bubba Pollard, Steven Nasse, and Casey Roderick. They're going to be there. Yep,
and Casey had a 63-point championship lead coming in, so obviously that's going to pad it as well. Let's talk about Bowman Gray Stadium, and again, another home on the Flow Racing channel, and one... If you haven't been, go, because TV does not do it justice.
No,
but Brandon Ward, what he's been able to do this year, fourth win of the season, he won the 100-lapper this past weekend. Obviously, we talked about Tim Brown getting his 100th career win there, but Brandon Ward is slowly trying to say, hey, don't forget about me, because all the talk's been about Tim Brown. But let's talk about the stadium this year, just how special it's been with a couple milestones being hit, but at the same time, plenty of racing coming down to the championship.
Yeah, you say don't forget about me. Don't forget about the defending champion of the modifieds at Bowman Gray, right? But that's what happens. You have Tim Brown winning a 100th, the first driver to ever do that. Burt Myers not far behind. Those are always your two big stars there. And then Brandon, who almost won the championship 2 years ago, finally gets it done last year. 4 wins now this year, but he is always the one that's kind of in the shadow of the other two there. But it has been a lot of fun this year. The racing has been really good. I wouldn't say that we've gotten a ton of those Bowman Gray
classic moments
that it's known for yet this year, but that's also... it can be a good thing, too, because the racing has been what's carried it this year, and a lot of people try to knock it. It's a lot of fun. And like you said, if you haven't gotten there, you got to just get to Bowman Gray to understand that place.
And I have a feeling a lot of people will. Obviously, this year, NASCAR with kind of under the management group as well. Rumblings about a national series being there. What are your thoughts on that? We've talked to Kyle about it on this show, and of course, some other drivers that have run at the stadium, but from a flow racing perspective and an expert such as yourself, I mean, could we see a national racer maybe next year or at least in the next couple years?
5 years ago, I would have said absolutely no way, but now we've seen Cup cars race on a quarter-mile racetrack inside of a football stadium and the Coliseum race. Yeah. So, I mean, anything is possible in this form of the Cup Series, right? So, what an amazing event I think that would have the potential to be. Bringing the Cup Series back to, we always talk about North Wilkesboro, Martinsville being the oldest tracks the Cup Series goes to. Bowman Gray is the longest running weekly track in NASCAR history. If you bring the Cup Series to that track, first of all, I mean, they pack the place every single Saturday night anyway. The place is going to be packed. The atmosphere is going to be amazing, but that would just look really cool on TV, and what an event that would have the potential to be.
Those would be some hot commodity tickets, that's for sure, because like you said, that place sells out for a typical Saturday night show. I can't imagine what it would be like, but certainly the ceiling is still not been met for Bowman Gray, and I think I'll be curious to see what NASCAR does here in the near future at the stadium. And wrapping up our kind of list of the winners this past weekend, Big Money Matt Hirschman, kind of been quiet on the NASCAR Wheeling Modified Tour on the races he's been a part of, but got back to victory lane in the Race of Champions Modified event at Evans Mill up in New York, the Summer Sizzler. 39th career win on that tour, 13th different racetrack I think he's won at. Obviously, we know the stoutness that Matt Hirschman has behind the wheel of a modified, but are you surprised it's been a relatively quiet year for Big Money?
Hirschman kind of goes through this sometimes where he's really strong in the first half of the year, especially one of his best racetracks in New Smyrna Speedway to start the year off. Usually rattles off some Smart Series wins in the Southeast to start the year off too right after that. And kind of goes a little bit quiet in the summertime. And then once those big money races come around, I mean, that's how he got his nickname. Sure. When it comes to the fall, then, he's right there for all of them. But he does tend to do this from time to time where you're like, Matt Hirschman's going to win this race, and then he kind of surprises you and maybe finishes second.
Yeah, well, and again, Matt Hirschman, I believe, is going to be entered in this weekend's National Tour race event. So keep an eye out on Big Money to see if he can rack up another win here in the summer months. Well, Rob, that was a busy weekend. We've still got plenty more to come. We've got Christian Rose coming up next. We're going to step aside for a quick break and bring in Christian Rose to talk all things ARCA as the National Series and the E-Series do a little combo event at IRP in Indianapolis. We'll talk about that and much, much more on the other side of this break. You're watching NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Wheeling Engineering.
Wheeling Engineering, a global leader in the emergency warning industry, designs and manufactures reliable and powerful warning lights, white illumination lighting, Sirens, controllers, and warning systems for the automotive, aviation, and mass notification industries worldwide. Whelen products are designed, sourced, and manufactured in America and tested on site to meet the toughest industry standards. Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. We never left, and we're here to stay.
Welcome back into NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. Whelen Engineering. Joining us now via phone, as promised, it is the driver of the number 32 AM Racing Ford in the ARCA Menard Series. That is Christian Rose. Hi, Christian. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
We're doing fantastic. More so, I'm really excited because I'm going to my home state in Indiana and getting ready to go race at IRP this weekend. What are your thoughts just first about going to IRP? Obviously, it was a good racetrack to you, I think, last year, but how excited are you to go tackle that short track and be in the heart of racing weekend in Indianapolis?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. The flatter tracks really haven't been my forte, I would say. I think we had some stuff figured out and a new approach for it that I think is going to be pretty good. We had really good short run speed, but I kind of blew through my tires a little bit as the run went. So I think I got a plan on how to work on that a little bit. And obviously I took a pretty big hit there in 2022. Love the track, love the area, love being in Indy. Just hasn't been the kindest place to me just yet, but looking forward to this weekend.
How difficult is this racetrack? You mentioned flat tracks not being especially your forte, but this track is a bit different than most because you can run bottom to top and anywhere in between. So how different and difficult, or maybe even easier, does that make this racetrack?
I'd say it's definitely a challenge. Like I've gone back and watched film, and you watch the leaders. It's obviously hard to pass for the lead regardless because you're fighting for the lead. But going back and watching a race and looking outside the driver's seat, it's just incredibly hard to pass, whether you're trying to pass for the lead or trying to pass for 10th. Working the bottom can work for you, but if you don't get the pass done pretty quick, you're going to wear your stuff out, and it's just going to hurt you as the run goes. And the challenging thing about it is it's really surprising how far you can drive off in the corner with how flat it is. There's no banking to hold you, but it's always been kind of mind-blowing to me that you can carry that kind of speed and not use a ton of brake and make that much momentum around a place that is just that flat. So it's a new opportunity, an exciting opportunity to just keep working on the flat track craft and just keep getting better.
Let's talk big picture. Here we are at the 2024 season, just about the halfway point for the ARCA Menard Series. 3 top 10s, 2 top 5 finishes, your best of 4th this year. How would you assess 2024 from you and your race team?
Yeah, I'd say it's been a ride of highs and lows. We obviously kicked the season off with top 5 at Daytona and Talladega. Had a shot to win at Talladega, just didn't have any help at the end. But we've also had some bad breaks. We blew a right front at Dover where I thought we were going to have a top 5 car. We were running 7th and going forward. And Charlotte, we had an incredibly fast race car and just had missed the heights on the nose a little bit and put us on the fence and killed the suspension. So those 2 races have really kind of thrown us back in the points a little bit. We've had really good speed at a lot of places. It's been a different story from last year where I don't think I had the speed as much, but had a lot of luck. And this year we just really haven't had that luck work out on our side. But I know law of averages, that'll flip, and we keep bringing the speed we're bringing. I think we'll end up fighting for a win for the season. We're coming up to Salem where we finished 3rd there last year, and that's a place I'm excited about, and Bristol and a couple others coming up. So really looking to kind of get on a roll and right the luck trip here and just keep rolling with it.
You mentioned some of the races coming up. You guys are about to get really busy, a lot of racing in a short amount of time. How important is this race, even though the track is very different from a lot of the other tracks that are coming up? How important is this race to get yourself righted, like you said, and get that momentum going on the right track?
Yeah, I think it's very important on the momentum side. We came off a top 10 at Berlin where I didn't really work lap traffic as fast as I should have, and unfortunately it put us a lap down, and we never could recover from getting a lap down because at the last 75 laps of that run, we were the 2nd to 3rd fastest car on the track consistently. So got the top 10, the momentum from the speed, and carrying that this weekend is important because, like you said, we have a stretch coming up week to week to week, and if you have a bad run or you don't come back with a car in one piece, it makes it hard to keep the morale up with the team and everything, especially during a grueling time of the season. So very, I think, important to come out of this with a solid run and just build on it and keep getting better from there each week, take it week by week.
Has it been frustrating as an ARCA Menard Series regular to have all these East drivers coming in and stealing checkered flags from the regulars? I mean, it's kind of bizarre that we're this far into the season and we've got a 0, goose egg in the win column for an ARCA Menard Series regular this year. How challenging has it been when you've got drivers like Connor Zilich and William Sawalich that come over in certain ARCA Menard Series races and, you guys have to contend against them?
Yeah, I mean, it is challenging, and you mentioned those two guys are very talented race car drivers that are going to go far in the sport. So it's cool to have that because it allows us to kind of chase that. And I think if you can put yourself to run with them, you know where you stand on being able to go forward and build confidence on that. But they're in great stuff, and they're great race car drivers, and it's incredibly hard to beat them unless they have a mistake. And to be honest, those guys don't make mistakes. That's why they are as good as they are and have won as many races as they are. So it's cool to have the challenge. It does get frustrating at times chasing them, but it gives you something to chase and just try to get to that point to where you can run with, the caliber drivers those guys are.
With all of that being said, though, how cool would it be to win, and how special of a win would it be for you to be that first ARCA Menard Series regular to get a win this year, and doing it at a place that has so much history to the ARCA Menard Series, but just racing in general, like IRP does? Yeah,
I mean, it would be so special. Our team's put in so much work, AM Racing and everybody, that it's been a godsend to be, for stars line for me to run for them. And getting that win would be just incredibly important to me. And those guys, clicking that first win off of my career and getting to do it as the first one to kind of, as an ARCA Menard's mainstay right now to make that happen. So it'd be special and something that we're definitely striving for. And I think we have the pace to do it. We just got to put a whole race together to be able to do it. And I think we're getting close to doing that.
Let's do a little get to know you since we have you on the show, and you've got one of the most unique stories about kind of how you've got to where you are now in terms of racing, because it didn't start that way. You played baseball growing up as far as being a D1 college athlete for the University of Maryland Eastern Shore playing baseball, and then how did racing come into the mix? Because that seems like two complete opposite worlds, but how did that evolve, from where you began and to where you are now?
Yeah, it's been a different story, and I appreciate you bringing it up because I love being able to tell it. And some people that don't watch racing or understand or listen to the story, I've only been racing for 5 years and really only 2 full-time seasons of that. So to come out third in the points last year and then put ourselves in contention like at Talladega this year to fight for a win, I think that's showing on what we can do. I'm still learning, and as I learn, I think my ceiling's just going to continue to grow because really I'm racing against guys that have been doing this for 20 years. Even with somebody like Sawalich, you're racing somebody that's been doing it for 12 years or 13 years, as young as he is. It's crazy to say, but that's just the truth of it. But I grew up a baseball player and got the opportunity to go play Division I baseball. And when that was done, I'd always been a huge race fan my entire life. I kind of wanted to explore being a pit crew guy, and I snuck in the garage and met some of BJ McLeod's guys when I was a child because my parents always took me to Daytona Beach for our vacation, and I would go to the racetrack and they would go to the beach. And he talked me into kind of coming out and trying to drive the car, and, went to my mom all excited about it, and she kind of shut it down. And when college came to an end, I was like, I really feel like that was where my calling was supposed to be at. And she was like, why don't you call BJ back and see if that opportunity's still on the table? Called BJ, and he said, basically, man, you'll get a helmet, you'll get a suit, you'll get to drive a race car, and said you got to do it. He brought Matt Tift out at the time, and I'm just a fan at this point because I'm like, dude, that's freaking Matt Tift, and getting to drive in a race car and kind of fangirling a little bit. He went out, put a really good lap down, and as we tested, I think we got within a tenth and a half of his time at Hickory, and the guys ripped the window net down. I'm like, dude, you never driven anything ever in your life? I was like, no. I was like, go-karts at the beach, but that's about it. And he looked at me, he's like, I think we should explore the thing for you because I think you got some talent we can work with. So God put a plan together and a story that I would have never believed, and I'm incredibly blessed to have that opportunity and thankful to guys like BJ and Mike Skinner and Bruce Cook and AM that's got me this far.
How nerve-wracking was that first test at Hickory? Because I was in a similar boat that you've been in. I've only ever done like rental karts. Like I know, Chris, you've raced. I've never raced anything before. And people always say to me, we got to put you in a car for a test and just let you feel what it's like. I feel like I would be so nervous that I would accidentally do something wrong and wreck the car that I wouldn't even be able to have fun doing it. So how did you even get to the point that you were just like, I'm just going for it and end up as fast as you did?
I was just excited, man. I was like, this is such a cool opportunity, and I went into it like this will be my one shot to get into a race car. So I was just, like just in love with it right away. And they looked at me smiling in the car, and they're like, BJ walked away. He's like, he's never gonna get out of a race car, and he wasn't wrong. So the funny thing was during that test, I got within a tenth and a half, and then they put some stickers on it, and we went out like, okay, let's see what you got on stickers. Nobody told me to build heat in the tires. Nobody told me to do anything like that. So I go out and I just try to get on it, and I ended up looping it off turn 4. Didn't hit anything, but he started laughing. He said, "That's kind of on us. We didn't tell you to get heat in it." But he's like, "That's kind of your limit, and let's not push past that." So it was interesting to be fast and also have my first, step over the line moment all on the same day. But it was a very special day, and still something I look back at and can't believe that as far as it has.
So how quick was the learning process after the test? Obviously, then you start getting behind the wheel of a race car, and then all of a sudden, before too long, a couple of years, you're in the ARCA Menard series. So how quickly did you have to learn? What are some of the things you learned just on the fly, just as you kind of quickly rose, up through the ranks?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things that, we came out with speed. I'm like, I'm going to go set the world on fire, and that was just not the case. It was running in super late models, and we went down to New Smyrna, and I got my butt handed to me for a long time, just in the way and learning. And, that was probably the most nerve-wracking part of my career is when I was that slow, is just trying to not affect the leaders or bring a caution out that changes the outcome of a race or anything. And I think the things that kind of taught me the most is when I got down with the Skinners and Mike was out there and, picking his brain, and he really helped get me up to speed, and those guys were incredible and let me test a lot. And I think the biggest thing that I learned is how hard you have to push a race car, but it's a fine line of pushing it hard but not blowing through your stuff. You can't just go out there and joyride it, but you also got to be up on the wheel and hitting your marks every lap and driving the heck out of it. But you can't go over that line and, kill the right front or, step over the line and back it on the fence. So I think that was the biggest thing, and I'm still kind of learning the most a lot of nuances of that side, and then like how much to get on the brake pedal and how to drag brake and how to not just cover foot it and initially toe into the throttle like eggshells under it. There's a lot of things that I had to learn throughout the course of my career, and like I said, I'm still learning. I've got 2 full-time seasons, or this will be my second full-time season under my belt, and before that I only ran like 5 or 6 races a year in a late model. So this was so encouraging for me, is knowing that we've run with some good drivers. We've put some great finishes together, like a podium at Salem last year, and 2 top 5s finished the season, and start the season this year, 2 top 5s in the first 3 races. So I'm excited to keep narrowing that gap, and I think that the ceiling's the limit once it all finally comes together and clicks.
Real quickly, as we're still talking about getting to know you and your backstory here, you mentioned that like the family vacation was going down to Daytona Beach and you would go to the racetrack. How special was it when you got to walk through those gates and know that you were going to race a car at the track that you grew up watching races at, let alone it being Daytona?
Yeah, it was. There's a lot that goes into Daytona for me, and it was, to answer your question, just storybook, Cinderella kind of story for me. I lived in Daytona Beach for 2 years, running with Mike and those guys down there at New Smyrna Speedway. So I used to live in a hotel right across the street that's been a sponsor of mine. Was actually my first sponsor for a couple of years, and I would go out and sit on the bench right across from the Speedway while I was fighting to find sponsor dollars, and it seemed so bleak at times, and just almost be in tears, like dreaming to be getting that opportunity. And then go even more full circle, my last college pitch I ever threw at our tournament for the postseason was in Daytona Beach. So I threw my last college pitch about a mile away from the Speedway. So going on vacations with my family, finishing my baseball career in Daytona, living there and starting to come up through the ranks, like it was just incredible to get to do that and continue doing it. And then this year bring a top 5 home there. It was really, really cool. So I think the crazy thing about all of it is that, I look back about how things happen in life, and I picked up a Jeff Gordon remote control when I was 4 years old, and nobody in my family knew racing or really was involved in it. And that led me to getting to live that dream and following the baseball dream to Daytona, and then actually ended up leading to me meeting my wife by moving to Charlotte and my son that's on the way. And it's crazy how those little things happen in your life to really put a course where you're going to go.
What an incredible story, Christian. That's so awesome to hear. Before we let you go, I know your career's continuing to be on the upswing. We know that you did a couple truck starts last year. What is in the future for you and your race program? Obviously, you want to finish the year strong, but have you started having discussions about maybe what's next following 2024?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely had some conversations, and I think it's a little premature for anything to kind of come together, but obviously wanting to make a jump, whether that's the Truck Series or Xfinity Series, and kind of go from there and showcase some more talent in the ARCA Series and finish the season strong and go try to contend for a championship before it's all said and done. But the goal is I'm 29 years old to make that jump and kind of establish myself in one of those series. I think being in the truck, it drives a way that if you're going to try to make the jump further than that, I almost feel like it makes some bad tendencies at times because of how hard you have to push a truck, how much downforce it has. The goal would be to get to Xfinity, but a lot of things are going to have to align, and then hopefully those things God has us planned to happen for us. And it might be 25, might be 26, but that's definitely the goal where we want to be.
Well, congratulations on all the success so far this year. Best of luck at IRP. Looking forward to catching up with you, and go get them the rest of this year. It's been fun to watch.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for letting me come on and share my story. Love what you guys do with MRN, and especially the Coast to Coast. So thanks for having me, guys. Absolutely.
Christian Rose, 6th in the ARCA Menard Series points. AM Racing getting ready to go racing at IRP coming up on Friday. We've got more to talk about, Rob, including some news and notes and the calendar. That's all coming up next here on NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering.
Whelen Engineering, a global leader in the emergency warning industry, designs and manufactures reliable and powerful warning lights, white illumination lighting, sirens, controllers, and warning systems for the automotive, aviation, and mass notification industries worldwide. Whelen products are designed, sourced, and manufactured in America and tested on site to meet the toughest industry standards. Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. We never left, and we're here to stay.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. Whelen Engineering, as once again joined by my co-host this week, Rob Blount for Flow Racing. And Rob, we were talking a little bit before the show started about all the great things that Flow Racing is putting out. And I know after you took over the NASCAR regional side of things, it's been content after content piece after content piece. It's been awesome to get to really behind-the-scenes look at some of the series, some of the stars that make the series what they are on the NASCAR regional side. What have you guys been working on lately, besides being at the racetrack and covering everything from the Cars Tour to the NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Series, the Modifieds, and so forth? What behind-the-scenes stuff are you guys working on lately?
Well, we've got one dropping literally today as of recording this on Wednesday. 10 questions with Melissa Fifield of the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour, multi-time most popular driver of that tour. Sometimes doesn't get talked about as much as she should, considering she's been, as Tad Hayslop of the NASCAR Regional Content Team called her, the Iron Woman of the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour, if you will. So we do this 10 questions interview every now and then. It's meant to be more of a fun and quirky, lighthearted interview just to get to know the person. So that one's coming out. And then one thing that I've been working on for the last month or so, going all the way back to the Cars Tour race at Dominion Raceway back in the middle of June. That was the Minis Mission 125, which is the foundation that Cars Tour driver Minnie Tyrell has, where he and his family try to help out young people who are dealing with cancer. And he brought out this year 30 families who, in some way, shape, or form, one of their children is either battling or has battled and is in remission, battling cancer, and matched them up with a team and driver on the tour and just showed them all a super fun weekend to take their mind off of things and let them have fun and forget about things. So that one is a really fun piece. Means a lot to me as someone who did have cancer. So to show and highlight the good work that Minnie Tyrell and his family are doing and how he managed to be a driver first and also put on this awesome event and awesome weekend for all of these people second at the same time. Really cool piece, and I'm really looking forward to that one getting out at the end of this week.
That is awesome. Can't wait to see that. Of course, you can check out all the content, whether it's new or even on demand, on Flow Racing. If you're not subscribed, do so, flowracing.com. It is money well worth spent, not just for the live events, but for all the content as well. Let's get into some news and notes before we get to the calendar here this weekend. Of course, we're in the dog days of summer, so there's plenty much going on, but a pretty cool news story came out. Daniel Suarez, who, of course, has come up through the NASCAR regional ranks, is going to go racing in Brazil during the NASCAR Olympic break. Of course, it's Olympic year, so there's a couple weeks off for the Cup Series, but he's no rest for the wicked. He's not only going to get married to his longtime girlfriend, Julia Piquet, back in Brazil, where her family roots are, but he's going to go run NASCAR Brazil at Interlagos. We saw Daniel do this with the LA Coliseum running NASCAR Mexico, a series that he was a part of, a few years ago. How special is it to have another NASCAR footprint and yet another NASCAR national series outside of the United States?
I think it's fantastic, right? We see all these Formula One races and Formula 2 and all of their footprint worldwide, and everybody just thinks of NASCAR stock car racing as being an American sport, and that's it. But we've got the Euro Series, we've got Mexico, we've got Canada, now we've got Brazil to continue to show how cool stock car racing is and how cool full contact, full-bodied racing can be, especially at some of these tracks that aren't necessarily known for that. Interlagos, known for Formula One racing and Lewis Hamilton and Ayrton Senna dominating there. How cool is it to see a stock car rumble around that place? I've always thought that would be awesome with the way they curve around the mountainside there and the hillside. Now we get to see Daniel Suarez go and race there. And by the way, what a year he is having. Becomes a U.S. citizen, gets married, like all the things that he is doing. What a year. It's
been a huge year for Daniel Suarez and his family for sure, and it's going to be fun to watch. And like you mentioned, between NASCAR Canada and Euro and Brazil, we've even seen some drivers like Tony Kanaan take part in that as well. So it's going to be fun to watch. Of course, that'll be August 4th during the NASCAR Olympic break down there in Brazil. So we wish Daniel the best of luck. And then speaking of things going on, Cars Tour, it's been a little quiet lately, but we're getting ready to go back to North Wilkesboro Speedway here in early August. They held a test this past weekend. I think there were like 20-some drivers that went up there to North Wilkesboro, did a shakedown test, spent several hours shaking down the race cars, finding out, what it's going to be like when we actually race there. Of course, we were supposed to back in May, but Mother Nature had other plans. What have you been hearing from that Cars Tour test? Kevin Harvick was there, of course, with all the regular stars for the Cars Tour.
It's interesting that, as you mentioned, more than 20 teams were there testing between the pro late model division and the headlining late model stock car division. But there were also a few that didn't go, surprisingly. Which yes, that was my reaction as well.
Why would you not go?
We're so used to hearing pavement late model teams testing and practicing all the time, and then there were some that didn't go. And the reason apparently is they think that through the heat wave that we had this past weekend, anybody that was down here knows it was.
I'm still sweating from the heat wave. Yes. Anyways,
Saturday was pushing like 110 on the heat index, and that was a middle of the day practice session for 5 hours. So the question was, how much are we going to be able to gain from it? But what I learned from the guys that were there, the track is already losing a lot of grip.
Really?
Which is very interesting on brand new pavement, and we saw what the racing was for the Cup Series back in May and during All-Star Weekend, and how they were able to go everywhere and still look like they had a ton of grip. Apparently, it was a very edgy racetrack. Connor Hall said that they learned a lot. Cars Tour points leader, he didn't skip it, which maybe some of the other guys better watch out if your points leader wasn't skipping that test session. But he said the track had a lot of grip in the spring, already losing a lot of it, and even he said he and his Nelson Motorsports team, we got a lot of work to do if we're going to be riding the elevator that night. So it's going to be an interesting night. And that's the other thing too, is again, they practice during the day. This is going to be a night race, so we'll see how much carries over. But like you said, Kevin Harvick got out there, and that's another interesting wrinkle that got added to it after the rain out. He wasn't going to be able to run it.
Sure.
Now he is. He didn't make any of those test sessions back in the spring because he had no plans to race it. Now he is. We'll see what he can do.
Yeah, no kidding. And whether you learn a lot or learn a little, the fact you're building a notebook is certainly going to help when we go back there on August 3rd. I know you said the racetrack was changing, but also the tires. What tire are we running with the Cars Tour at North Wilkesboro?
So I believe they said it's going to be a combo of, I think, the ST2 tire on the left side and the ST3 tire on the right side. I could be wrong on that, but it is going to be one of the ST1, ST2, ST3s, which is the new line of tire that Hoosier has rolled out, which is different than what we'll be seeing at the Hampton Heat at Langley. They'll be on the traditional F45 Hoosier that we've seen in late model stock car racing through the past however many years. It's been a long time that the F45 has been the consistent one. But the ST line is the new line that Hoosier has rolled out for late model racing at the start of this year, and a lot of the touring series have adopted to it. So that'll be the tire that we're on, and that'll be interesting to see because there's been some inconsistencies with it that teams have spoken about, and how from one set to the next things change drastically, and that's just another wrinkle that all of these teams have been having to learn this year and adapt to.
The Hoosier ST tire, I mean, is that just more for better grip, for increased fall off like we're seeing with the Cup Series and Goodyear trying to find more fall off? I mean, what is the goal with those STs?
The goal that I have heard is that they wanted to see these guys be able to battle and race as hard as they can for as long as possible.
Yeah.
And we're used to seeing with the F45 tire, you have to, especially in the car store where you're not allowed to change tires over 125 laps, we're used to seeing them have to manage for a lot of the race and then see what they've got left for the rest of it, and then try to go hard with what they've got left. The goal this year has been to try to let them race as hard as they possibly can for as long as possible before the tire gives up. And there's some races where we've seen that work. Look at Langley, for example, with the Cars Tour. That was a stellar race, stellar finish, and not what you normally see at Langley, which is a heavy tire conservation race because the track's so worn out. There wasn't a lot of laying back during that race in June, and probably will be different from what we'll see this weekend at the Hampton Heat.
It's going to be fun to watch. And speaking of the Hampton Heat, that round number 2 of the Virginia Triple Crown coming up this weekend, and it is going to be the biggest Hampton Heat in its 16-year history. 38 cars, Rob, signing in. I wouldn't be surprised if we get 1 or 2 more late additions. I don't even know if they can fit 40 cars around that racetrack. But at the same time, this is a crown jewel event. We saw Brendan Butterbean Queen pick up 2 wins, his second last year. Walk me through the expectations of what it's going to be like this weekend. Obviously, in the name is Heat. No, it's going to be hot. But what do you expect this weekend?
Hot is the number one thing. Literally one of the hottest races I've ever worked was the 2022 Hampton Heat.
Yeah.
Felt like you were on the sun, but that's okay because it was a lot of fun at the same time, and that race wasn't sold out. It didn't have the 38 cars that we're going to have this weekend, and the atmosphere was already incredible back then and last year too. This year, it's going to be absolutely insane this weekend. Like you said, 38 cars, the most they've ever had for this event. First time the Hampton Heat's ever sold out. Their GM, Vaughn Crittenden, said they're expecting the largest crowd in at least the last 25 years at Langley Speedway, which I think you can attribute a lot of that to the Dale Earnhardt Jr.
I was going to say, Dale Jr. did say back in June he's going to run it, and we saw him get a seat fitting on his social media channels yesterday. So is that part of the Dale Jr. effect? I would assume so, but at the same time, this is a crown jewel event, so it's going to bring its own diehard fans as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a bit of both. Like I said, the last 2 years, they've been near capacity. I mean, it's a pretty large grandstand, and it's been hard to find some shiny metal aluminum during the race to look at because it's been so full. But they already sold out within, I think, 3 days of him announcing that he was going to be there. So it's a bit of both. Like you said, diehard fan base on that eastern side of Virginia, but adding him into the mix certainly can't hurt. And let's not forget, by the way, that this racetrack was nearly left for dead almost 9-10 years ago. It closed at the end of the 2015 season. No one knew what was going to be happening to it. Bill Mullis goes and buys it, opens it back up in the middle of 2017. Now 9 years later, we're talking about selling the place out and having the biggest crowd we've ever seen. So what a resurgence for a track that was almost completely lost to us.
Things you love to see, because I know sadly lately you find more racetracks closing rather than opening. So this is more of a success story with Langley Speedway. When you look at favorites, can Connor Hall kind of continue his dominance? Obviously, he leads the Cars Tour points. He leads the NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly National Championship, trying to make sure that last year didn't look like a fluke. And he also won South Boston in the first leg. So, I mean, I would assume he's the one to beat. But when you go to Langley, there are several other drivers that say, no, this is also my racetrack.
There are, but he's also been saying, he's also one of those guys saying, this is my racetrack. I mean, already this year he's got 8 total wins at Langley, 7 in just weekly competition, plus that thrilling Cars Tour win, the closest finish of all time with that series. Last year at this point was a little bit stronger. He was undefeated with, I think, 10 wins going into the Hampton Heat. But, I mean, 10 versus 8, what's really the difference? He's still been the dominant guy. And last year he was showing, okay, I can win in my own car, my family blue 77 car at Langley. And he even had to change to that car to go win the Cars Tour race last year there. This year, he goes out and wins in the Nelson 22. So it's either car. He's proving this is my track. I can go out here and win. And if you want to win this trophy and you want to lift this flaming cauldron at the end of the night, it's going through me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know Brendan Queen, who surprisingly has had what I would think is a little bit of a quiet season. I mean, he still has a couple wins on the Cars Tour schedule, but he's trying to go for a third Hampton Heat. And Ty C.E. Falk is the most winningest driver in that event. So does he have a shot against Connor Hall, you think?
Absolutely. You can never count Brendan Queen out at Langley as well. I mean, look at what happened back in June in the Cars Tour races. He drove up through there, kind of laid quiet for a little bit, and then immediately pounced with like 40 to go, took the lead, and unfortunately spun out there late in the going with some contact. That he actually had a bumper bar that was dragging on the backside, and it appeared that Brent Cruz hit the bumper bar, and that was enough to turn him around, which was an interesting scenario, but still rallied back in like the last 10 or 20 laps, and like I think finished 12th from like 18th or 19th where he restarted. But he's always good at this racetrack, and he was the guy last year. Again, Connor Hall was undefeated going into this race, and Brendan Queen put a stop to it and derailed that train and took his second win. So if there's anywhere that Brendan Queen and the Lee Pulliam Performance team should be going to try to right this ship and maybe level out the roller coaster that they've been on, this would be the place.
Lee Pulliam versus Nelson versus, Donnie Wilson. And we've got so many teams that are going to be real threats to win, including some other racers in the field. Carter Langley, Bobby McCarty on the Cars Tour slate, Cade Brown, Peyton Sellers, Caden Honeycutt. The list goes on. So it's going to be fun to watch. I know you're headed up there as well. Extensive coverage all weekend on Flow?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'll be headed up there on Friday. We've got, I think, a 5-hour practice session on Friday. So
plenty of time to get your car dialed in.
Exactly. Plenty of time. And then a little bit more practice on Saturday, so plenty of time, as you said. But yeah, I'll be headed up there Friday morning. We're going to effort an interview with Dale Earnhardt Jr. and then try to promote this race and find out why Dale Jr. decided to go to Langley, because he's never even been here before. So that'll be interesting to hear from him on why he chose this race and this event finally now after all these years to go run. And going to do our always fun pit walk that Cade Brown seems to love to jump into and try to commandeer from us. So that'll be fun too. And then just going to be having fun, eating some redneck fries and hanging out with some people at Langley.
What are redneck fries?
So redneck fries, French fries, cheese, pulled pork on top of it. I think they put a little bit of ranch on the side too. It is phenomenal. One of the best concession items nationwide, but especially at Langley Speedway. So if you're headed up there,
drooling a little bit.
Yeah, I've been thinking about them since I was told I was going to this race. So, but to be clear, it is sold out. Make sure you get there early. Get a good parking spot, and then go get yourself some redneck fries and hang out and have some fun at Langley.
It'd be tough to put those in the tank when it's 100 degrees outside, but you know what? They still taste good. So
it finds a way to be worth it.
That's right. A couple other big races this weekend before we let the folks go. The NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour back in action after a couple weeks off. The Duel with the Dog 250 at Monadnock Speedway, 8 p.m. also on Flow Racing. Second round of the Granite State Short Track Cup. First race of the season. Last time we were there for the Bowler family car to go victory lane with Jake Johnson. I would assume he's got the leg up on the competition to go back, but how can you count out Ron Silk and then, of course, Matt Hirschman being in the field? What are your expectations for the Tour being back at Monadnock?
I'm not really sure what my expectations are yet because the track is so different after it was repaved in the offseason. That race that was run earlier this year that Jake Johnson won, very different from what you would normally see at Monadnock Speedway. You look at last year, Doug Coby, Justin Bonsignor, 2 races at Monadnock. Both drivers led every single lap in the races that they won. This year, that was very different. We had 3 drivers lead more than 40. It'll be a very different race from what we've seen, but I think Jake Johnson, he's got a handle on that racetrack. He's pretty strong there, and Matt Hirschman's always strong there, but believe it or not, he has not won a NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour race at Monadnock yet. He's won some open modified shows, but he's never finished outside the top 10 there in any of his NASCAR's Tour starts, so
boggles
he will
my mind.
Always be strong. Man, I don't know what happened, though, to defending champion Ron Silk. He led like 48 or 52 laps or something, and then faded and finished outside the top 10. So it's going to be an interesting race. You put modifieds in a high-bank quarter-mile track, it's always going to be fun.
So you've got Ron Silk coming back for redemption. You've got Matt Hirschman looking to get a win at Monadnock Speedway. Oh, yeah, you've got Jake Johnson. Oh, yeah, and then you got 5-time winner Justin Bonsignor that's saying, don't forget about me. I'm still in this title hunt as well. Woody Pitcock, some of the kind of local Northeast modified racers, Steven Kopchick are strong contenders as well. We mentioned the championship battle. Ron Silk, 2023 champion, has just a 2-point lead over Justin Bonsignor. That's not going to change. I think we're going to flip-flop several times before we get to the end of the year, but it's going to be fun to watch what happens out at Monadnock Speedway. Again, second time we've been to this racetrack. That race, 8 p.m. on Flow Racing. And to wrap up kind of the weekend big coverage is the ARCA Menard Series and ARCA East collaboration event at IRP, Indianapolis Raceway Park in Indianapolis, the Circle City 200. Where are the ARCA Menard Series regular drivers in Victory Lane? We can't find any because it's not happened yet this year. Anytime we have an East driver that come in, William Sawalich, Connor Zilich, they have taken their cars to Victory Lane. I would expect those two, who are on the entry list, to be duking out on Friday night. What do you think? By the way, that race on MRN this weekend, yours truly and Kyle Rickey, when he's finally done over there at Stafford, will join the broadcast crew. But what are your thoughts about IRP? I'm glad this race is back on the schedule. It has been for a couple of years, but I mean, I would assume this is the Connor Zilisch and William Sawalich show.
I think it has to be again, which is really getting interesting because we saw at Iowa the two of them kind of get into it a little bit on nearly every late restart.
Sawalich said, "I've lost some respect for Connor Zilisch," which this is feuding a little fire. Yep.
He did, and then let's just bring him to a short track and just ignite some more of it, right? So I think that's going to be really interesting to watch. Man, I tell you, William Sawalich over the last few years, you take him to any racetrack and he adapts to it really fast, and I thought he adapted really fast. Yes. Now you bring Connor Zilisch in. My goodness, he has taken to every racetrack, every type of car that he runs, which is a lot of them throughout the year, and he is an immediate contender in every single car he seems to race this year. So him versus Sawalich, I think that's going to be the showdown this year. But what about for you? I mean, you get to be on the call of a race at your home racetrack of sorts, so that's got to be awesome, and you get to talk about all these guys.
Yeah, no, it's really special, and I know when this race was brought back a couple of years ago, I remember as a kid going to Kroger Speed Fest and watching the then Nationwide Series and the Craftsman Truck Series duking it out before going to the big track and watching the Brickyard 400, sitting in the grandstands, watching some of my heroes, but I was going there back when, USAC, well, they still go there, doing the Carb Night Classic or the night before the 500. Tracy Hines, who's now the competition director at Thor Sport, was winning races there in an open midget at IRP. So it's a special place for sure. The people love racing in Indianapolis, and obviously that weekend is special. Getting to go from IRP, a lot of the Cup Series drivers and Xfinity drivers will make the trek over. It's only about a 10-minute drive from the big track in Speedway, Indiana to Claremont, Indiana, where IRP is. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm excited because it's kind of where the young talent really get to shine. And I heard Corey Heim talk about it this week. It is a fun racetrack because you can run on the fence, you can run on the bottom. It doesn't matter. Wherever the rubber kind of takes and the grip is where the fast lane is. So there's certainly multi-grooves around that racetrack. But it's going to be fun to watch. And I think, we talked about Connor Zilisch and William Sawalich, but there's plenty of other drivers in this field, and even plenty that are doing double duty. I mean, Sammy Smith is going to go run a truck earlier. I mean, we know who else is going to be in this field. Greg Van Alst, one of the championship contenders as well. Marco Andretti. I mean, hello, Indianapolis. Connor Daly, Indianapolis. I mean, you look at some of the names that are on the entry list, it's going to be fun to watch. But the big thing, too, is you've got the East Championship and the ARCA Menard Series Championship. Different drivers fighting for different championships. On the East side of things, we talked about Zilisch having just 17 points on William Sawalich. Andres Perez, who's got 8 top 10s and 9 starts this year, leads the ARCA Menard Series title chase by 40. But that isn't going to go away either because Greg Van Alst is still there in the wings, so is Chris Wright and the rest. So how do you think that's going to manage? We've got these ARCA national drivers trying to fight for a title and a race win when you've got the East guys trying to do the same thing.
It's interesting. It's certainly, we hear a lot people talk about a race within a race, but this, really is the case. You've got 2 different series basically running together with their own point standings, racing at the same time. But Andres Perez, like you said, he and Greg Van Alst been kind of overshadowed by everybody else because they haven't gotten into victory lane yet. Like, he's sitting here, hey, hello, I'm the points leader of the ARCA Menards National Tour, and everybody wants to talk about William Sawalich and Connor Zilisch. Can't really blame us if we're going to be honest with you. But, you mentioned no regulars have won yet this year, and I think be an interesting weekend to see if that changes. Yeah,
it certainly will. It's going to be a tough task. And you've got Venturini that's bringing their 5-car stable as well with Chris Wright, Tony Breidinger, Dean Thompson, Gia Ruggiero, who's been pretty lights out on the East side of things, just second fiddle to Sawalich and Connor Zilisch, but he has a win this year. It's going to be fun to watch, but again, for the ARCA Menard Series, 9 weeks of the next 10, they're going to be racing with a doubleheader mixed in there as well to finish the year. So this is going to be the kickoff to a brutal stretch for them after kind of having that one race, a couple weeks off, one race, another couple weeks off, and then there's only 3 to go for the East Series. So points certainly coming down the line as well. So lots of good stuff. Some weekly racing coming up this weekend for you folks to check out. Thunder Road on Thursday. NASCAR Canada is at Sutherland this weekend. That's on Saturday on Flow Racing. And then, of course, Flow Racing, your home for a weekly series. Jennerstown, Riverhead, Hickory, Berlin, and much, much more. Rob, before we end the show, we like to ask Kyle for a driver of the week, something that maybe stood out that we didn't talk about. Did you prepare one for us this week?
I did. I did. Let's see. Let me check my notes here. That's right. So, yes, I went with Peyton Sellers, multi-time NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Series national champion, of course. Swept the Twin 65 features for the late model stock cars at South Boston Speedway this weekend. Won the first race from the pole, drove from 6th in the second race to win that one. And anytime you go out there and win double features in one night, I don't care how many cars, how many, how few, it doesn't matter. The field is always deep at South Boston Speedway, and to go out there and win 2 races in one night, always a tough challenge to pull off. And speaking of challenges, honorable mention, Chris Fleming, Bowman Gray Stadium, won the $9,000 Fans Challenge.
That's right.
At Bowman Gray on Saturday night. For driving through the field, for those that aren't familiar with that one, you qualify. If you qualify in the top 4, you choose to not redraw for your starting spot and instead start all the way at the back. And if you drive into the top 4, you win the Fans Challenge. Chris Fleming did that, which a lot of people knock Bowman Gray for not having a lot of passing.
I was about to say.
You drive through the field, you pulled something off.
Yeah, 100%, because it's easy to go a lap down there as well, which is how tight that is. So really good stuff. Yeah, and Peyton Sellers, I was talking to Kyle, I remember earlier in the show, and we were like in end of April, early May, and I said, where's Peyton Sellers at? He's not winning at South Boston. Well, there you go. He picked up 2 over the weekend. Good stuff. Well, again, appreciate Rob Blount for joining us here on the show. Of course, content creator at Flow Racing. He'll be at the Hampton Heat this weekend. Be sure to check out all their content all weekend long, and it's going to be fun. But for us on the Motor Racing Network, we are headed to Indianapolis Raceway Park this weekend. Myself, Kyle Rickey, and the rest of the MRN crew will be on the call beginning Friday night at 5:30 Eastern for the ARCA Menard Series Circle City 200, followed immediately by the T-Sport 200, the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. 3 races to go until the playoffs begin. We will have all that for you again, that broadcast at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. For, again, Rob Blount, our producer, Pat Jaggers, my name is Chris Wilner. You've been watching NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. Whelen Engineering. Until next time, we'll see you here on Coast to Coast.